Welcome to the Bruce D. Campbell Farm Food Discovery Center. Let's take a tour. This is a 2018 swather. Swather is a piece of equipment that a crop farmer might have that would go into a field at harvest time, cut down the grain and lay it in rows to dry. You don't want grain to be too wet or any of your crops to be too wet when you put it in the grain bin. That could cause a molding issue, which is a food safety issue. This is one type of equipment. It looks very similar, at least the cab portion does, to what a combine would look like. So this is just the part that the farmer sits in, and it's actually quite roomy for a new-ish piece of equipment. When you visit Farm and Food Discovery Center, you can actually climb right in to the swather cab, check it out, and pretend you're in a field farming as a farmer would. Here we have all the different stages of wheat growing. So we're going to start off here, seeding. So this time of year right now, spring, this is when farmers are getting into their fields to prepare them and also plant their crops. So this is for wheat here. And wheat is actually planted in the lower parts of these mounds. And that's so that it protects the seed, water can run towards it. Just like any other plant, farmers' crops need the same things to grow. So to get to this kind of grassy stage, they need water, sunlight, and nutrients. So they get those similar ways that others can. Crops take up some of their nutrients from the soil. There are 4 major soil nutrients: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and sulfur. Different crops need different amounts of each of these nutrients. So planting your wheat on the same piece of land year after year, not a great idea, because it's going to use the same nutrients year after year, and eventually your soil will get depleted. There's ways that farmers deal with that. They can add fertilizer, so it could be a naturally occurring fertilizer like compost or manure. They could add a synthetic fertilizer that adds a little bit more food to the soil. But they could also consider doing a specific crop rotation. So planting something before wheat, like soybeans, that's going to add nitrogen to the soil. Now in this section you might notice there's also some other plants growing. Dandelions, weeds. So weeds are just plants like our crops are, and they're going to take those same nutrients, the sunlight, the water, and the nutrients from the soil. We don't want them growing at the same time because they're going to take away from the growing capability of our crops. There's different ways that farmers can handle them. They can spray to kill them. They can do crop rotation, change what they're growing because certain weeds are going to like certain areas a different amount, or they could go and pull them as well. Now we see some fully grown wheat. So these top parts of the wheat plants is actually what we're going to eat. So those little grains can be ground up into flour. So any baked goods you like that might come with flour can come from wheat. Something really cool about plants that a lot of people don't know is that often the plant goes by much deeper than you think. So if we look at the ground here, we have the roots of a wheat plant and the roots, if I go all the way down, of an alfalfa plant. So alfalfa is a type of grass often used for hay, and it's what we call a perennial. A perennial is a plant that you plant once and it'll grow for a couple years. Hay actually can be cut down multiple times a year once it's established. And so these really long root patterns really help with nutrient absorption and water. Wheat, on the other hand, is an annual. An annual is a plant that only can be planted once and harvested once. So it grows one year and you have to replant it the next year. The roots are a much different shape. They're shorter, they're more clustered together, so it's taking more nutrients and water from higher up in the soil than an alfalfa. Often farmers will rotate if they're growing wheat or alfalfa or different annuals and perennials to make sure that they're using the soil, water, and nutrients as efficiently as possible. It's a really scientific process. Here we have a snapshot of some of the crops grown in Manitoba. Can you guess what this first very tall crop is? It's corn. So we grow a lot of corn in Manitoba. A lot of the corn we grow, though, is not sweet corn, so it's not a vegetable corn. It's actually used for animal feed, so you call it feed corn. So if you're driving past a farmer's field and you see corn, well, obviously don't stop and get a kernel, a cob of corn. That's stealing from the farmer, but also it might not end up being the vegetable corn you like, and it won't be worth it anyways. Next one, pretty easy, carrots, peas, this one is canola. So when you see a yellow field in Manitoba, it's very often canola. Fun fact about canola was actually invented in Manitoba. So before there's this canola plant that we're used to, there was another plant that looked very similar, but the pods, so in these little bean pods here, there's little seeds that have oil. Well, in that oil was an acid people couldn't digest. So a researcher from the U of M worked with a researcher from Saskatchewan, and they actually bred out the acid. The word canola stands for Canadian Oil Low Acid, CAN-O-L-A, and now it's one of the most widely used oils in the world. Next we have potatoes. Manitoba is known for our potatoes, especially in that kind of Portage La Prairie area. So we grow a lot of potatoes, so many in fact that we have 2 large potato processing plants. So a processing plant is a place that's taking food in its natural form and just changing something about it to package. It could just be putting it in a package, it could be cleaning it, it could be inspecting it for something, or it could be cutting it into French fries, getting it ready. So of our 2 plants, one is McCain, so it does a lot of the frozen potatoes we like, and the other one is Simplot, and Simplot makes French fries for McDonald's. So they are making a lot of French fries for us to enjoy, often using Manitoba potatoes. Now let's head into our barn here. Now this is not a real barn, this is a model barn, but we're still going to practice what we call biosecurity. So biosecurity is steps that farmers are putting in place to stop the accidental spread of disease, whether it's to animals, whether it's to their cropland. We want to keep everything as safe and clean as possible. If you were to go into our hog barn, which we're going to check out in a minute, you would actually have to have a full shower. So anytime anyone visits the hog barn, they have to have a full shower, shampoo, soap, everything before they can enter the barn. Anytime they leave the barn, they have to have a shower as well. So it's called shower in, shower out, and it's just a way that we can make sure we're not accidentally bringing any germs into the barn that could make the animals sick. When we talk about microbes or germs, there are good microbes and bad microbes. So good ones are the ones that can go into some of our food to help convert it. So Saccharomyces cerevisiae here is a good microbe that helps us with bread production. Lactobacillus bulgaricus is also good. That helps us with our yogurt and cheese making. But there are some bad ones as well. So there's ones that could make us sick, like this influenza, as well as ones that can make animals sick. So that's the main goal of biosecurity, like we were talking about. Keeping animals safe, keeping humans safe, and keeping plants safe as well. Now let's take a look into our hog barn. So we're going to start off with the breeding zone here. These 2 big animals we see in front are boars. Boars are male pigs. We also have some sows in this section. So we see the top back of the one there, and you can see in that slatted wall, the few of them are laying down there. So a sow is actually only called a sow after she gives birth to her first litter of piglets. Before that, she's actually going to be called a gilt. So in this breeding zone section, this is where the sows are actually going to be impregnated to have a litter of piglets. The gestation period or pregnancy of a sow is 3 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days. So they spend the first month here in this section, and then once we're sure they're good and we give them an ultrasound, that's when they head to the next section. So let's go check out the ones in our next section over. Now let's take a look into the gestation zone. So as I said, gestation is the scientific word for pregnancy. So all the pigs that we see in this section here are female, and they're all currently pregnant. So the group they're in, they're all going to give birth at the same time. So this is what we call a group housing unit. So they're together in one unit. They have a shared space. They sleep near one another. They have access to the same water, and they have access to some toys as well. A very interesting thing about pigs is they create a hierarchy. So that's kind of like an order. When they're in a group like this, normally within about an hour, they will figure out who's the alpha, so who's kind of the strongest one, all the way down to the weakest one, and they stick to that order for everything. Alpha, she'll get to sleep in the cleanest spot. She eats first. She plays with the toys when she wants. She kind of runs the show. And when they go out of the order, that's when they kind of vocalize. So they can get quite loud when they're vocalizing to one another to kind of put them back in their place in that order. In the corner here, these metal bars with the blue square, that's an electronic feeder. So all of the sows here have ear tags that have computer chips in them. They walk towards that feeder when they want to get fed. The computer in there will actually read that ear chip and know exactly which pig it is and start slowly dropping the right amount of food for that specific pig. That's because pigs will overeat. The term pigging out comes from pigs. They keep eating, and don't get full. So this is one way we can make sure that they're not overeating, but this technology also helps keep track of the animals better. Because a pig really likes to eat, they're not going to skip a meal unless something's wrong. So are they sick? Sometimes the other pigs could be stopping them from eating. So when the manager comes, they'll actually check the records and see if a pig hasn't eaten. If a pig hasn't eaten, something's wrong, they'll go check on that pig. And occasionally that can help us find if they are sick a little bit quicker. So although yes, technology doesn't care for animals, it can help to keep them a little bit safer by tracking things you wouldn't normally notice. You might see this pig here playing with that chain a little bit on her head, trying to bite it there. These are what we call enrichment devices. So we have a few in this barn. Our barn is actually a research barn. So we're located at the Glenlea Research Station. We have a few different enrichment things that we're testing. So over here we have a chain that has a ball with some dimples on the end of it. Towards the back we just have plain chains. And we have another apple one hidden by this pig here. So they love to play with things, chew on things, and we're researching which one do they actually prefer, which is their favorite type of enrichment device to play with. So by having these to play with, it kind of keeps them calm and reduces anxiety, so they're not going to be as aggressive with one another. Now this green stick pole here with the bristles, that's also another enrichment device we're testing. So it's a scratcher, and they can walk up against that scratcher, get a nice back and side scratch whenever they want. The only problem with it is that, like I said, pigs like chewing. So the bottom half of the side one is actually missing all its bristles because the pigs have chewed it all off and it's fallen into the cracks at the bottom there where all the manure goes. It's a common misconception that pigs like to be dirty. They actually like to be pretty clean. So they'll go to the bathroom kind of in the center here. You can see the pile of solid manure kind of behind that pig there. They'll go to the washroom there and they'll sleep along the edges. So they sleep along the edges, sleep close together so that if, they had to protect themselves from a predator, they'd be against a wall. That's also why we have these kind of half walls here. Gives more space for them to sleep with their back against something, which makes them more comfortable. When they're about a week away from farrowing or giving birth, farrowing is the word we use for pigs giving birth, they'll actually come in pairs, and in those pairs they will get a bath. So they go into a section we can't see in between this room and the next one we'll check out and get a bath, which they seem to really enjoy, get nice and clean, so that they can give birth in a clean environment. Let's take a look at our birthing zone. So we don't have any baby piglets in here right now, but I still want to point out some cool things about this section. So this is the birthing zone. We call the process of birthing for pigs farrowing. So these are called farrowing crates. So a farrowing crate has this kind of white outer shell, this box, and in the center there's the crate portion. So that's where the sow is going to be, where the black kind of base is, and it's designed for some specific purposes. So first, the sow, she's about 300 kilograms. The piglets when they're born are much, much smaller. So it's actually designed to prevent her from accidentally sitting on the piglets and hurting them. So you see the base, there's that kind of square metal piece. That's actually a lift pedal. So when she's laying down, the lift pedal is pushed down and she's at the same level as the piglets so they can drink milk. Now when she wants a bit of a break, she can stand up, she'll get off that pedal and the whole center portion will actually rise up. and now she'll be at a different height than the piglets. The piglets are going to be on those orange sections on either side of the crate. Now, when she goes to sit back down, there's not going to be any piglets underneath her, so she's not accidentally going to squish them, which is great. Pigs also aren't great at regulating their temperature. So sows are much larger and they get hot very easily. So the base of that crate is actually cast iron, so it's a type of metal that stays nice and cool. And there's actually these little water drippers that when the barn temperature gets above a certain level, it drips water right onto her shoulders and cools her down. The piglets, on the other hand, need to be kept warm. They don't stay warm very easily. So their flooring is rubberized. That's what that orange kind of looking thing is. It's rubber over the metal to keep it a little bit warmer. They have heat lamps and they also have heating pads. So that's what this kind of white rectangle is on the side. That's a heating pad that would stay on the whole time that they're there. So the sow and the piglets are going to be in this section for about 21 to 28 days after they give birth. After that 21 to 28 days, the piglets now need some solid food in their diet as well to continue growing. So they'll first be introduced to some solid food and then they'll be moved to the next section where they'll be weaned off of milk. The last section of our hog barn is the nursery zone. This is the last part we're going to see on our tour today. So here we have some roughly 22-day-old piglets. So they were actually just in that other room we saw yesterday. Now here they're very small still, much bigger when they were originally born, but they're growing really fast here. So we keep them in their litter groups at this barn because they create that hierarchy anytime they're together. And we actually only keep the piglets until they're about 60 days old. At 60 days, they'll go to another farm and they'll actually be raised up to market weight there. We do have the capability of doing it, but we just don't always do that because of the research we're doing. So here you can see another enrichment device. So it's a chain with kind of a wheel. So it's a little smaller, a little easier for them to chew on with their small mouths. They have access to as much food as they want here. That's what these feed troughs are. So they fill up automatically and keep them nice and full, and they can eat as much as they want because they are growing very fast every day. Unfortunately, we caught them during a nap. Normally they're kind of running around and playing with one another, but we all need naps too. It's that afternoon nap that they're really enjoying. When we think of hogs, we often just think of meat products that might come from the animal, but there's actually a lot of different products that you might use every day or are used to seeing that could come in part from a pig. So here we have a football. Pig skin is used for leather goods like footballs and safety gloves. Crayons. Fatty acids from the bones are used to help harden crayons. Paint bristles. Swine hair can be used to make some paint brushes. Some car wax. Glycerin from pork fat can be used as an ingredient in car wax. And insulin, this is a cool one. So insulin from the pancreas can be used to treat diabetes in humans. There are much more uses as well, and you can discover them all at the Bruce D. Campbell Farm Food Discovery Center. I hope you enjoyed this tour of the Bruce D. Campbell Farm Food Discovery Center. There's much more to explore here, much more to see. So come on down, book a tour, book a birthday party, book a field trip, and come check it out.